Hey everybody, today is September 20th, 2025. Welcome again to a short video courtesy of investingsuccess.ca. If you've been following my videos over the past couple months, you'll know that I've had some kind of a change in philosophy, if you will. I've come across the work of astronomers, mathematicians such as Scaffetta from Italy, Tattersall from the UK, Wilson from Australia. Now, these guys are very big on heliocentric events, physical manifestations happening between the planets in our solar system. In particular, they follow Mercury, Venus, Earth, Jupiter, and Saturn. They claim that Mercury, Venus, and Earth, by virtue of their closeness to the Sun, are capable of exerting what they call gravitational torque on the surface layers of the Sun. Jupiter and Saturn obviously are farther away from the Sun. However, their sizes, and they are massive planets, their sizes make it possible for them to also exert a gravitational torque on the surface layers of the Sun. They have shown that this gravitational torque is at a maximum when these various planets are making aspects to one another in the form of 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, and 180 degrees. The gravitational torque forces that are applied to the Sun cause the Sun to in turn emit more solar radiation. And they like to remind the people who read their scientific papers that the Sun is a burning ball of plasma gas. It almost has fluid-like properties. And so the gravitational torque then is very capable of upsetting the dynamic balance in this burning ball of plasma. Now, the solar radiation, and it is quantum energy that the Sun releases, goes hurtling out into space. And of course, a prime target is the planet Earth and all of the people who live on Earth. Now, luckily, we have a geomagnetic field around our planet, which is designed to protect us from solar radiation, but it is not 100% foolproof. When the Sun has these episodes of gravitational torque applied to it, and it starts emitting increased levels of solar radiation, some of that actually makes it through our magnetic field, and it impacts us here on Earth. Now, more recently, I've been reading some work by some scientists, and I will be talking about this in future videos. They've determined, after years of scientific investigation, that the nerve cells in the human brain contain tiny, tiny, tiny receptors, which are very much in tune to quantum energy or this solar radiation. And in events where the solar radiation is enhanced, they are certain that these tiny, tiny receptors in the nerve cells in the brain pick up on that. That is the root of what we call human emotion. As our emotion changes, our behavior changes. If we are feeling positive, we tend to run towards things. We become bullish on the stock market. If our emotion is such that we are feeling uncertain or perhaps a little fearful, we run away from things. That is, we become bearish on things like the stock market. Now, how exactly this solar radiation causes bullish or bearish behavior, what the trigger for that is, I don't know. But what we do know is that there is a net change in human emotion. I'm going to show you some charts here, and I think these charts are going to make you really, really think about this, and it's going to, I think, change the way you look at astrology or the planets. So what I'm going to show you now are three charts, and I've got the name of the chart blocked out in the top bar of the chart, as you can see here. These three charts, I am going to refer to them as G, M, and C. And I'll tell you at the end of the video what they are. Now, in particular, I want to focus on 4 planetary events. And in this chart here, and in every one that we're going to look at, the 4 that I'm going to look at are starting at the left of the chart. So in this chart, you can see that at the left, there was an event of Venus 120 degrees to Saturn. Mercury was conjunct Saturn. Jupiter was 90 degrees square to Saturn. So that's one set of events that occurred in the middle of May 2025. The next event that I will allude to on my charts is Mercury being at its maximum latitude, and that occurred in the middle of June. The next series of events, and there was quite a few of them, there was actually 1, 2, 3, there were 7 of them, and they all occurred towards the end of June and into the first week of July. And then the fourth event that I want to draw your attention to occurred third week of July, and that was Mercury at its declination minimum. So now, in the case of this particular chart, we're going to call it G. You can see that in the middle of May, these events of Venus trine Saturn, Mercury conjunct Saturn, Jupiter square Saturn, they caused an emotional change. The price of this particular financial instrument had been declining, and all of a sudden it made a sharp V bottom right at these 3 heliocentric events. Now, I'm going to show you a chart of the next financial instrument, and I'm going to draw your attention to these same events in the middle of May. And if you look at the left-hand side of this chart, you can see there wasn't a V bottom, but rather there was kind of a change in trend. The trend had been going up, and all of a sudden it went sideways, and there was a consolidation. So there was definitely something that changed in the human psyche at these events, but it was a different kind of change than on the previous chart. Now, let's look at the next chart. This is the one that I'm calling C, and I'll reveal what it is later, but you can see that at this event of Venus trine Saturn and Jupiter square Saturn, the price had been going up, and again, these events manifest in the solar system, and all of a sudden, emotion changes. The bullish behavior takes a pause. Now, let's look at these charts again in succession. So here we are back at the chart of what we call G. Now, this time I want to draw your attention to the middle of June with Mercury at its maximum latitude. So you can see that there was a burst of bullish activity, and as Mercury latitude is approaching its max, all of a sudden, human emotion flips. And now people start running away. They become bearish in the short term, and the price starts to go down. Let's look at the chart that we call M. Let's see what happened there. Okay, here it is. In this case, the price had been going down short term, and at Mercury latitude maximum, all of a sudden you have a sharp V-type bottom, and people become very enamored with this particular financial instrument, and they start bidding the price higher. So there was an emotional change. Let's look at the next one. So here's the one that we call C. Wow, look at what happened at your Mercury maximum latitude in the middle of June. Price had been trending, drifting, kind of sideways to down, not committed. All of a sudden, human emotion changes at Mercury maximum latitude, and this thing just runs away like a scared rabbit. So human emotion, again, changed in a very dramatic fashion. Let's look at these in succession again. End of June, first week of July, you had a whole series of events. So on the financial instrument we call G, you can see that there was a sharp V-type bottom, and then there was a rally, and then all of a sudden human emotion changed again. So there was a bit of a flip-flop in here. Let's see if that same flip-flop can be seen on the other charts. So here's M. In this case, was there a flip-flop? Yeah, kind of. There was, you can see there was a negative, a dark colored bar right at the end of June, and then all of a sudden emotion changes and the price pushes higher for 3 trading sessions, but then it can't hold and it backs off a bit. So yes, there was a dual change in human emotion there. Let's take a look at the next one. A little bit different. The Mercury maximum latitude had triggered a V bottom and a sharp response. That response continued right into then the end of June, early July, and I guess you could argue that there was a bit of a flip-flop. The price couldn't get much beyond $380, and it started to pull back to about $340, but then all of a sudden it changed again. Human emotion became bullish, and prices went on to make even higher highs. Let's look at these again in succession. This time I want to look in the middle of July, and you'll see on here there's an annotation that says Mercury declination minimum. And you can see that at that event there was a sharp V swing top, and what had been a favorable trend all of a sudden flipped, and people became afraid of this financial instrument, started selling it, and pushed it lower. Let's see if we see the same thing on the other ones. Not necessarily. Here's what we call M, and you can see the Mercury declination minimum event is annotated in the middle of July, and look what happened here. Price had been going down, all of a sudden there's a V bottom, and human emotion changes on this one, and people become very bullish and they start bidding it higher. Let's see what happens on the next one. Okay, different situation again. Price had been pushing higher, higher, higher. We come into the middle of June, Mercury declination minimum. All of a sudden, human emotion changes, people become negative, and they start pushing it down. So we can see then that these events on these charts are all the same. And we can see that in all cases, there was an emotional response. And so that ties in with the work then of Scafetta, Tattersall, Wilson. That ties in with some of the more recent studies that indicate we have receptor cells in the nerve cells of the brain, which are very in tune with this quantum energy coming at us from the sun. And you can see that if you were simply aware of these heliocentric events or these latitude or declination changes, and if you could make a note to yourself when they're about to occur, you can then watch price charts. And if you're using some sort of a trend type indicator like a slow stochastic, a MACD, and there are various other ones out there, you should be able to then reasonably well track changes short term in trend. And if you are a short term minded trader or a short term minded investor, you might be able to take advantage then of some of these swings and some of these changes in human emotion. So now you're probably wondering what these financial instruments are, G, M, and C. Let's take a look. G was gold futures. The one that I referred to as M was a company called McGrath Rentals, trades on New York, and their whole business model is the renting and leasing of portable office buildings that you quite often see at construction sites. The one that I called C was a crypto exchange, Coinbase. So I would like to say that gold futures, the rental of portable construction buildings, and the brokerage of crypto are not really related to one another, yet we can see that in all cases The heliocentric events invoked an emotional change, and the price changed direction. And that was the whole point then of this short little video, to show you that I think classical astrology, where there's meanings assigned to different houses and different signs, I'm moving away from that. And I'm focusing on what is physically happening in our cosmos, and how is that affecting the human animal here on Earth. Now, that's it for this video. So I've obviously thrown quite a bit at you. I've made you think. I'm going to be going away here for about 4 weeks to have some solitude, and I want to finish off in my travels. I want to take some time and finish off the manuscript for the 2026 Almanac. It's going to be different from the previous ones. It is going to have a focus now on these heliocentric type events in our cosmos. You can always find me at investingsuccess.ca. I've got the astrology letter, the cycle report, and I've even brought in this change of thinking into these various reports. You can find me on Substack. I post a lot more videos on Substack, and you can find me there under the handle Planetary Trader. These heliocentric events, as I suggested, demand a close consideration then of the short-term trend. There are a number of trend indicators. I talk about them in my book, Follow the Trend, when to buy, when to sell. And also in my upcoming little getaway, I'm going to be doing a rewrite, we'll call it edition 2, of a book that I wrote, the first ever book that I wrote back in 2013, like 12 years ago. And it was called The Bull, the Bear, and the Planets. I was completely new to astrology at that point, and I'm going to be rewriting this then largely in the context of the heliocentric type work that I think is way more important than your classical astrology. So thank you for watching this rather lengthy video, and you may have to watch it 2 or 3 times, but I think these scientists like Scafetta, Wilson, and Tattersall have basically revealed or unveiled what is physically happening to our emotions as a result of cosmic events. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great day, and we will talk real soon.